Good morning and welcome to today's webinar from Financial Cloud. My name's Mark Buckley and I'll be your host today. This webinar is titled Personalisation in Financial Services, a Blueprint for the Future. I'll now hand you across to today's presenter, Kyle MacDonald. Kyle, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Appreciate that. Well, welcome everyone. Hopefully I'll take you through something a little bit kind of different to different the webinars that I've gone on kind of previously. If anyone has any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to put those into the comments and I'll address those at the end. So my presentation is going to be on personalisation, and I'll take you through kind of step by step on that. So what we're going to cover off today is I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. Then I really want to kind of explore what is personalisation. I want to look at how personalisation is used in other industries, and then some practical examples of how it could be used actually in financial services. And then we'll finish off with some of the challenges and tips in order to one, get the kind of most and how to kind of actually implement personalisation as part of your strategy. So if I kick off a little bit about me, I'm the CEO over at Financial Cloud. Got 17 years experience across tech, strategy, analytics. I've worked from startups through to enterprise banks, and big focus on data automation in customer experience, and how we actually use that to scale an operation. And Financial Cloud is the company that I founded is a cloud-based financial CRM platform, which typically used by bank lenders, debt collection companies to service their customer base in a scalable but highly automated fashion. So enough, let's jump into, I suppose, the initial kind of conversation I usually have with anyone that I'm speaking to within the industry is, what are they looking to actually get out of a new solution or a service that we're kind of providing? And it usually comes down to one of these 5 hows, I would call them. It's, how do I increase my revenue? How do I reduce my customer servicing cost? How do I improve customer satisfaction? How do I reduce my risk? Or how do I stay ahead of my competition? And I think that all of these can be addressed with personalisation. So what is personalisation? And how is it different to customer experience? So I like to kind of break this down into a bit of an analogy, and to look at it in a coffee shop manner. Let's talk about it. So customer experience, if we're talking about a coffee shop, is the whole experience at the coffee shop. If it's clean, is it comfortable? Are the staff friendly? Did they get your order right? Are you served quickly? All of these things make up the customer experience, the feel throughout the interaction. Okay, it's nothing specific. It's just, how does it generally feel? And from a financial services point of view, how you would look at that is, if someone calls you up your contact center or goes on your website, it's, is it easy to use? Does it load quickly? Are your staff helpful? Do they get through to the call center and to get through to the correct department that they're looking to go through easily? All of that's kind of your customer experience. Whereas if we were looking at personalization, if I go back to kind of the coffee shop piece, it's, if you were to walk into a coffee shop and the barista knew you, before you got to the start of the queue, if they had your flat white sitting there waiting for you, that's personalization. They know you. They're personalizing that kind of experience, and they're just making it a lot kind of slicker and nicer for you. And in the same way, if we kind of look at it in financial services, it's like reducing the options potentially open to customers on your website that are more personalized towards them, so that they're not seeing irrelevant information, or when someone comes through to your kind of contact center, that they have that information there and they can personalize, for example, who they go through to, so it's someone they know. It's all around, I suppose, a more of a focused experience, so it's tailored to the individual's preferences and needs. And the scope, personalization is often is one part of customer experience, and And I think that probably, hopefully, kind of describes what personalization is. Now, I think it'll probably be useful to go through just some examples of that. I think that's how I find it kind of easiest to kind of see how it works. And first of all, if we just look at some non-financial services examples, I think that's really where it's been used kind of best at the moment, and it'll be very familiar to yourself. So if we were to go ahead and look at Amazon, for example, their personalization is legendary. They've got a recommendation engine that effectively customizes the homepage and recommendations throughout the site specifically to what you've been looking at or what they think that you will actually want. So you can see here, doing a little bit of gardening coming up. This is my Amazon. So you can almost just have a picture of exactly what I've been looking at, and how that actually works is, them knowing what you want, and putting it directly in front of you, means that you're much more likely to actually take them up in the offer. And research done by McKinsey consultants for Amazon showed that 35% of Amazon's revenue comes from their recommendation engine. That's how powerful it is, and how powerful personalization can be as part of, I suppose, your kind of customer experience. And if we go on to something like Coca-Cola, I'm sure some of you have probably seen the campaign that they did, which was Share a Coke, I believe it was called. And it just put people's names on Coca-Cola bottles, but it created an emotional connection. It was a really simple form of kind of personalization they did. And what was really impressive about that campaign was that for about 11 years straight, the Wall Street Journal showed that Coca-Cola's sales were actually declining. And after launching the Share a Coke campaign, Coca-Cola's revenue started to increase by 0.4% per year. So they completely turned around that decline, just with a very personalized kind of campaign to engage kind of customers. And a final example I just wanted to show was how retailers, so one of the largest kind of expensive retailers is dealing with returns, a very, very expensive kind of part of their operation to run. And many of them, so Henry Lloyd's a good example, is that they're starting to try use personalized information they can gather on you to recommend what size of their fit would best fit you, so that maybe you're not ordering multiple, or there is sometimes variance kind of in sizes between different kind of brands. So that's been a really kind of successful campaign that they've run, and a couple of examples across, I suppose, kind of other industries on how personalization has been utilized very effectively. Now, in financial services, I want to go through a couple of practical examples of how I see personalization being utilized, and how we're kind of using it kind of at Financial Cloud to enhance kind of customer experience. The first one is tailoring menu options. And from a customer point of view, if we go through an example here, we have something called an intelligent IVR. And if someone calls up your IVR and they're calling your inbound line, often we do ID&V on the actual IVR system, just so your agent, it can be passed through, verified, and it saves a little bit of time. But what about if you actually use that information? You know who the customer is at that point. And what we do is we can actually turn and say, well, what product does that customer have? And potentially, if there's different departments per product, first of all, is the department open? Because if the department's not open, let's say, well, mortgages closes early versus, collections. Maybe we just give them an out of hours message there and then, rather than having to go through the menu options to then eventually get it. Now, if the department's open, we can start to look at other things. We could look at, well, where's that customer within their journey? Are they going to go down just a servicing path because actually they're just up to date in their payments? So we provide them, maybe balance, make a payment, or an option to go through to an agent. Or, if they're actually overdue, we might want to start promote different options to them. And potentially, we might have actually sold or outsourced that account. Instead of them coming all the way through to an agent, maybe we can just play them a message and give them a forwarding option to go directly to who they need to speak to. It's all about, I suppose, changing the IVR per customer so that you massively save not only your own time, because it's your staff time that would have to be speaking and answering these questions, but it's just a much, much nicer experience for the customer because they're getting where they want to go a lot faster. Another good example of this is just customized repayment options. And that can be used with stuff like payment links. So understanding, I suppose, the amount that's due, and often you've got an awful lot of data around, how much the customer actually has, I suppose, in disposable income. Or if it's a really large debt, instead of just trying to break it into, 12 payment options, we might want to break it down, to customize it more towards an individual. We could go ahead and create range of options, so certain individuals have different tailored responses, so different lower and upper amounts based upon what they can afford. A lot of this stuff, I suppose, entailing kind of payment links, even providing expiry dates to prompt them to go ahead and to actually use the link, as a kind of a nudge. That's again another type of kind of personalization. These are ways that we can actually build out, I suppose, kind of very convenient experiences for customers that are based upon their situation specifically. Another example is, personalized communication. And I'm not just talking about, I suppose, just adding someone's name here and adding a balance in, but adding in operational information at the same time. So if someone was to raise a complaint or a dispute, instead of just sending them back in a generic message saying you're going to get in contact in them in 7 or 14 days, maybe actually repeat back to them and add into the template custom for each one. And systems can do this, is pull out the information that the agent has actually entered into the complaint and put that into the template, so the customer actually knows what was recorded down. And you can clarify stuff then up front. There's less kind of conversations back and forth that maybe something wasn't recorded right, and it just gives kind of the customer comfort that you've really kind of taken their complaint seriously. You've repeated it back to them, and you've given them a date on when you're looking to actually, I suppose, kind of progress that forward. So I think personalization in communication can just be taken a lot further than I see kind of a lot of organizations using it just now. Behavioral nudges are another really good example of how it can be used. And this one's for anyone that knows, obviously MasterCard and Visa have implemented a new way of updating card details automatically that we've implemented, but a lot of places haven't done that. So I'll go through this example anyway. But just if you see a card, for example, is going to expire, maybe just pop it up if they're on the customer portal. Tell them that it's going to expire, so that that the payment method doesn't fail, and then you're contacting them more on an arrears kind of call. These kind of like prompts and nudges are super useful, and there's lots of other kind of like nudges that can be used there. And in different places, it doesn't just have to be in the portal. It could be used again on like kind of IVR, or agents could prompt stuff as well. It doesn't always have to be kind of a digital kind of experience for that. Another really great example is just proactive support for customers. We have a lot of information that usually comes through in customers. And what we should really be doing, I suppose, is when someone, for example, maybe fills in a standard financial statement on your website, if you see, for example, that they potentially have maybe a negative disposable income, you could pop it up on the screen, but maybe you follow that up later on, and you speak to that customer around, well, giving them the option of a callback or a number to call in on. These are ways that we can kind of like, personalize, I suppose, those kind of experiences that, based upon the information that a customer enters, we adapt, I suppose, the strategy to actually cope and help them in different ways. And finally, just the kind of stuff like customer portal. We can add stuff like, prompting customers to show that their account might be passed. For example, in this example, it could be passed illegal, but it could be anything, that we're prompting them. But we're letting them know, rather than it just being, for example, a letter and email going through. If someone goes on to do something, we just prompt them there and then. We show them kind of what's urgent specifically to their account. That's kind of the first example here. The second example is if someone, for example, comes on and logs in to a portal. If you've outsourced or you've sold that account, maybe instead of like letting them kind of go in and not being able to kind of carry out actions, maybe just prompting them up front and giving them the information that, here's a number you should contact in order to speak to the correct organization. It's just reducing, again, similar to kind of the IVR process, reducing calls into your organization and providing customer the information that they're most likely going to need up front so they can get to where they're going faster. Now, there's a number of challenges that often come with implementing personalization. It's not sometimes seen as a super easy thing to do, but it is one of those areas where if you start doing bit by bit, over time you're going to see a massive change in kind of your organizations and how they actually communicate and work with customers. So I just want to go over some of the key challenges which organizations often experience. The first one is siloed customer and account data. The number of organizations that I go into that take customer data and store it across multiple different systems is unreal. And it makes it incredibly difficult to get a consolidated view of who that customer is. And to be able to actually go ahead and use that information effectively in order to implement something like personalization, but also a lot of other kind of strategies. You really want your data kind of consolidated into one location. And it's great if you've got it in a data warehouse, but it really does need to be operationalized. It's not just for reporting. You need to be able to actually operationalize that as well. A lot of people, they find that their existing technology just doesn't support functionality. They can't do personalization, and they need to potentially look at different solutions in order to kind of take that kind of next step in the journey. And if they are going to go ahead and implement it, if they're doing it bespoke, especially, or they're outsourcing it, it can be quite costly to implement certain things. So it's really kind of prioritizing, I suppose, where most benefit is going to be had, rather than just trying to implement absolutely everything. And if you are doing it internally, again, if your solution out of the box doesn't just, I suppose, automatically do this, it can be quite time consuming. It can eat an awful lot of resource. If you're having to pass information on a daily basis from data warehouses out in files to different kind of parties and integrations that you've got in order to build personalized experiences, they're very static, and it means that there's a lot of kind of maintenance in order to kind of actually keep that going. And that's something to very much kind of bear in mind. You really do want to be, if you're going to be kind of implementing stuff like this, trying to look for solutions that can kind of cope with out of the box, because it can just eat up resource and money otherwise. And lastly, people sometimes just don't really know where to start. They're not used to it. And to be honest, I'd probably recommend seeking more of an expert's kind of approach, just to go ahead and look at, I suppose, kind of your organization, where they are just now, and actually start to prioritize it based upon prior experience. It's great to do some tests here and there, but you really can end up spending a lot of money and spending a lot of time in actually implementing this stuff if it's not done correct. And so important considerations that are really kind of going to help out with this, if you're undertaking that, is going to be, ideally you want your platform to have a dynamic database. That's going to be super helpful and useful for you. because it means that you can store all of your information in one place. You're not having to build something yourself. If your solution does it for you, it's there, it's available. It's just configuration. Fantastic. The second piece is an event-based architecture. And what that means in kind of non-technical talk is that if somebody enters something in your website, it passes that information over to your system one at a time, and each piece of information that's passed over can actually be actioned upon at that point. And that's really interesting because it means that as customers, for example, maybe log on is a good example to your website. When that log on happens, you could actually carry out an action off the back of that. And everything that a customer does, or everything even an agent does, can have an action off the back of it. So it happens in real time. So when people are on and doing something, that's when you want to be actually following up with a prompt or an action from your side in order to get the preferred outcome that you're looking for, because that's where their focus is at the moment. And an event-based architecture very much helps, I suppose, move towards that. APIs, I think, are key to kind of solutions, because you're not going to want every solution often that one solution's integrated with. You're going to want to do your own integrations potentially over time. So making sure that solution has a variety of APIs to be able to use all the different kind of functionality, I think, is one of those key areas to look at when considering kind of solutions. And it's much easier, to be honest, if there's kind of pre-integrations available. So if solutions are already pre-integrated with mail, SMS, email, all these type of suppliers, it means you're just not having to deal with it. The personalization is just inbuilt, and it's just going to massively reduce down the time and cost in order to kind of start to actually implement these type of strategies. And I think finally, it's often kind of overlooked, is just you need to ensure that whatever solution you're going to be moving forward with actually is easy to use. The people that are going to be doing this day in, day out don't want a complex system that requires them to do coding all the time to change something, or it's got loads of green screens in order to get like advanced functionality. They want something that they can click and do it in 5 minutes. That's how your organization becomes agile and can implement this stuff over time, because they're not going to implement it all at once. It's going to be most likely a phased approach, where you go ahead and you implement one thing, you A/B test it, see if it works, and great, it works. Okay, we'll implement something else, and you move forward like that, getting gradual kind of gains over time. What I suppose we kind of did in order to make this as easy as possible in organizations is we developed something called an open financial CRM, and that just really allows all the customer and account information to be fully kind of brought together into the one kind of CRM platform, which then has lots of kind of pre-integration. So we've made it incredibly easy to kind of do all of this stuff, but it can be more difficult depending kind of on the technology you've got. But I'm doing I'll finish off just by letting everyone obviously know that if they're interested, I suppose, kind of in this and kind of personalization and kind of what I've been kind of talking about, and they want to hear in a little bit kind of more detail how that can be used and practically done. So just in a screen share via kind of platforms and how you kind of build out this kind of stuff. I'm doing a webinar again on the 11th of June that you're welcome to join. You'll be able to go to it if you visit our website at financial-cloud.com/live-training. You can sign up to that when it's, I believe it might be up now, but if not, it'll be up in the next probably a day or two. But I see there's potentially a couple of questions come in, so I'll finish off there, and what we'll do is just look at those kind of questions and use the remaining kind of 5 minutes for those.
Thank you, Kyle. Yes, there's questions come through. First one is, what are the first steps to begin implementing a personalization strategy? Please.
Okay. So I think the first step really comes down to data, and comes down to where you're actually going to get that information from. You want to centralize it first of all. If you don't get that groundwork kind of completed, and you don't have an easy process in order to pass the information back and forth. So, when a form gets filled in, that whatever solution you're going to use to actually do your kind of personalization can't quickly receive that information, you're making life kind of hard for yourself. So I'd say laying kind of the foundations of in the data side is probably the kind of key point. And out with that is maybe just kind of looking operationally at the different kind of solutions that you've got and trying to understand, if you could, what would you do? Building out some user stories from an operational perspective on, it'd be really nice if our solution could do this, this, and this. I think mapping that out, you can then almost step back into looking at, well, actually, what data do we need to bring together in order to do that? And doing it in bite-sized chunks, I think is key. So yeah, that would be my advice, I suppose, for actually implementing personalization.
No problem. Thank you, Carl. Another question's come through. Looks like protecting customer information is obviously quite important to people. So how can you balance personalization with protecting that customer information?
So I don't think that most of this isn't doing anything different to you already actually do. It's just doing it in a much more when they come through to your agent, they're going to be using this, and it's agents are going to be doing it. And what we're trying to do is take it away from agents having to spend 15, 20 minutes with a customer and do that each time, to seeing if we can build out that kind of a personalized experience in a kind of a self-service format. I suppose one thing that's really important is that you get your terms and conditions right. Making sure that you check, for example, if you're the owner of the data, what your privacy policy states to customers, first of all, so how you can use that data. To be honest, most privacy policies that I see these days allows for all this to be utilized. But that's probably step one. And is step two is probably just not really being kind of creepy about it. The way that I kind of look at it is, how would I want an experience to be if I was to call up a financial services organization, and if they can use my data in order to get me a faster, better outcome, then that seems to make sense. What I probably don't want to go ahead and see is the kind of stuff that you would see kind of in e-commerce. 5 other people have made payments. That might not kind of suit everyone, because some people might not just be able to. I think it's a different kind of environment. That personalization might work in e-commerce, but I don't think it's going to work over here. So just being mindful, I suppose, around how it's used, and that it's within a fitting, I suppose, kind of solution that really does actually help the customer. And it's not too much just trying to, kind of push collections. And I think a lot of the kind of examples that I've gone through today really kind of looks at it more from kind of a customer approach on kind of giving them information that's useful to them. So yeah, I think that's probably kind of the key point when it comes to kind of using kind of customer information, is use it in a means which is best for the customer, not just for your business.
No problem. Thank you, Kyle, on that. We're into the last minute now of the webinar, so just if anyone else has any other questions, send them in now, or if you think about them after this webinar is finished, please still send them through to either myself or Kyle, and we'll happily come back to you on those. So we'll just give it a couple more seconds, Kyle, see if any further questions come through. But I think from a timing perspective, if they do, we'll probably have to come back to them after the webinar itself. Okay. Doesn't look as though there's anything's coming through at the moment. So what I'd quite like to do is thank you very much to Kyle for his time today. I'd like to remind everyone that this webinar will be listed on our website from tomorrow if you'd like to listen again, or recommend it to any colleagues who couldn't make it today. Also, just before you go, we'd appreciate it if you could take a few seconds to give a little bit of feedback in the relevant area provided. I'd like to thank you all for your time today, and goodbye.